Welcome to FailCraft, the podcast where we dive into the messy, real side of success and explore how setbacks become the stepping stones to growth and clarity. Today's guest is Dr. Jeffrey Reynolds. He's an Ironman triathlete, a 15-time marathon runner, and a non-profit executive. The very picture of health and discipline. But his story is a powerful lesson in how life can throw you a challenge you never saw coming. He was diagnosed with cancer not just once but twice within 2 years. He is the author of Every Mile Matters, and he's here to talk about how the mental toughness, discipline, and grit he built for endurance sport became the essential survival tools for the race of his life. So, Dr. Reynolds, it's a real honor to have you on FieldCraft. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. And hopefully not only will I share my story with your audience, but maybe I'll change some of their stories at the same time. That's the goal.
All right, so let's get things started. Your story is so powerful. You are an Ironman, you beat prostate cancer, and then you get the second diagnosis, stage TB colorectal cancer. So you described that moment as being told you have just 12 more miles after you thought you'd finished the marathon. So can you take us back to that specific setback? What did it feel like to have to find the strength to fight all over again?
My first diagnosis was a surprise, too. I had just completed Ironman Florida. For folks that might not know, that involves a 2.4-mile open water swim in the ocean, and 12-mile bike ride, and then a full 26.2-mile marathon. If you don't finish it in less than 17 hours, none of it counts and you're disqualified. And so I finished it in 15 hours and 9 minutes. I had plenty of time to spare. And then, fast forward 5 months and I get the news that I have prostate cancer. You know, Certainly a shock, because I always thought, look, I'm the healthiest person in the world. How can I have, cancer? And I learned the difference between health and fitness. And they're two very different things. You can have your fitness and be in good shape, but have something happen to you that impacts your health. And of course, being in good shape gives you a little bit of an advantage. So I went through prostate cancer treatment in July of that year. And by November, I ran the New York City Marathon. I didn't set any records, but I had a good race and I finished. And then, as you mentioned, in August of the following year, I thought I was good. I was back. I was healthy. Everything was awesome. And then during a routine screening, I got diagnosed with colorectal cancer, which was a lot more serious in nature than my prostate cancer. And I thought, I'm through cancer. I'm good. I'm done with this part of my life. I've learned my lesson and I'm taking care of my health and I'm doing all those things. And then, out of nowhere came this diagnosis. And so it felt a little bit like the New York City Marathon. When you finish the New York City Marathon, you barely make it over the finish line. If you're like me, you're tired, you're exhausted, you've been out there for a little while. Then you have to do this very long walk through Central Park and back to the family reunion area where you find your loved ones and your family. And it takes about 40 minutes. And it's a bummer because you feel like I ran the entire marathon. I'm done. I'm good. I just want to sit down and relax. And then you need to walk for another 40 minutes. And so the second bout of cancer felt a lot like that. Like, I did this. I'm done. I'm finished. And then I had to start all over again. And the treatment for colorectal cancer was longer than it was for prostate cancer. I needed to have 27 rounds of radiation and 35 rounds of chemotherapy. All that stuff certainly takes a toll on your body and on your mind. And so all in, it was about, I guess, 9 months worth of treatment. And still to this day, I go for regular scans every 3 months to make sure that my cancer hasn't come back. I'm part of a clinical trial, and so I'm a research subject. We mapped out the treatment plan, it involved 3 cancer drugs as opposed to 2 cancer drugs. I was in great shape, and so the doctor said, we think you can manage the 3 drugs. We think you can manage the side effects, which will be much more significant than if we gave you the standard 2-drug regimen. Look, I made it through, but I learned a lot in the journey, and so 2 cancers in 2 years certainly taught me a lot of things, and some of those things are embodied in Every Mile Matters.
All right. Thank you very much for sharing your story, Dr. Jeffrey. So let's talk about that athletic mindset. So your book is about how that training became your triumph. Can you give us a specific example from chemo or radiation where your triathlon training just kicked in and took over?
Yeah, really, I needed to use that mindset throughout the entire thing. One of the reasons that I love triathlon is because it's about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Mm,
Triathlon is an inherently uncomfortable endeavor. I've run marathons, I've done triathlons, and there are points in every race where you begin to have doubts that you're going to finish. Your body hurts all over. Your mind and your legs are both telling you to stop and just rest for a while, but you don't. You keep going. You acknowledge the uncomfortability and you keep going regardless of that. You acknowledge it and then set it aside. And that helped me develop a mindset that I do hard things. And so cancer was not going to be easy. It was going to be one of those hard things, but that I developed the grit, the discipline, the perseverance to be able to address it. There was one morning, well, a lot of mornings when you're on chemo, you're nauseous a lot. And so I would wake up and feel sick in the morning and throw up. And I thought about it and said, well, you throw up during triathlons pretty often. You throw up during the swim and you wipe your face off and you keep going. You honestly don't give it a second thought. It's really not a big thing. And as I thought about, my work day after I spent the morning being sick, I wiped my face off and went to work. That's what we do. We just keep going. The other place where it came in handy, chemo is a lot like a marathon in that, when I was 2/3 of the way through it, my doctor said to me, your blood counts are beginning to drop. You don't look well. I don't want to have to put you in the hospital. Maybe we'll cut this short. And I said to him, there's zero chance that's going to happen. I don't care if I have to go buy chemo on the street. We're finishing this. We said we were going to do this many treatments, and that was going to give me the best possibility of a good outcome. I have all sorts of side effects. It's lousy. I knew this was going to be lousy. Let's just finish this thing. And, we went through to the end. And so, without that mindset, I might have said, you're right. This is getting hard. Let's just stop and hope for the best. So, I think triathlon serves you well in life. I think sports serve you well in life. We know that physical activity is critical to not only our health, but our mental health. And so it's not one sport, it's 3 sports, but I found a great peace of mind through doing it. I exercised through chemo. I didn't stop exercising. I wasn't running 10 and 12 and 15 miles for sure because I couldn't, but I made sure that I got out there every day. And there was, one month where I walked almost 200 miles because I wasn't allowed to run. And so that kind of exercise gave me the peace of mind. It burned off the stress. It kept everything in perspective. And really helped me keep going. And whether you're trying to apply that mindset to cancer or some other serious illness or some change in your life, right? The loss of a relationship, the loss of a job, or you're just trying to get through your day, that keep going mindset and finding that inner sense of strength, purpose, and power is something that we all ought to consistently develop.
all right. So you also talk about the shift from measuring success by race times to celebrating clear scans. So how did you learn to find meaning in those new, very different kinds of victories?
The ultimate victory when you're fighting cancer is you live to see another day. It sounds dramatic, but when you get that kind of diagnosis, especially when you get it twice in a short amount of time, you always wonder and say, well, even if I beat it this time, 3 strikes and you're out. I hope it doesn't come back. And so, that became the victory. There was one day in particular where I was sitting in an infusion chair getting chemo. You go there for the entire day and you sit there and they pump chemo into you. And then you take the pump home and it continues for a couple days. But there was one day when I was sitting in the infusion chair and I looked outside on the sidewalk and there were people running by. And I remember how jealous I was. That used to be me. Now I'm sitting in an infusion chair as a chemo patient. And so when I got back to running, it wasn't, I have to go out and run a 5K. It was more along the lines of, I get to go out and do that. It's a privilege to be able to go out and do that. In my triathlon career, I never looked at it and said, I'm going to win any of these races, because you really don't win anything. You get the same medal that everybody else does. And for me, it was really just being out there competing with myself, not necessarily competing with other people. And as I went through cancer, you come to appreciate more the miles along the way. It's not so much the finish line, but it's the process of life. And I came to see the time I spent with my friends a little bit differently, the time I spent with my family a little bit differently. You value that more because suddenly you've been tapped on the shoulder and told nobody lives forever. And there's an invisible countdown clock right above our heads that follows us around 24/7. And none of us knows when that alarm's going to go off. And so make the very most of your time, live your life in the best possible way. My big shift, I always thought about legacy, and that is, what is it that I hope to accomplish before my time here was done? And in getting cancer twice, the tense shifted. It shifted from what do I want to accomplish to doing more of an evaluation and an inventory of what I had accomplished. Like, if this was, if my time is limited, then am I happy with the things I've done? Am I happy with the way I've acted? Am I happy with my relationships and where I am in life? And the answer to all of those questions was yes. But by the same token, I still wanted to do better given what was hanging over my head.
Okay, that was an inspiring one. So, Dr. Jeffrey, you are an author, yeah? You have
Yes.
a book. Yeah, so can you quickly just tell us about your book, what it's about, your motivation behind writing the book, and who were the ideal readers you had in mind while writing it, and the value expected to get from reading your book?
Sure. I started writing it during chemotherapy. I was writing blog posts about my cancer experience. I started writing blog posts about cancer as soon as I told my family about both bouts, because I felt it was important that readers knew that I had no symptoms whatsoever and I still got cancer. And if I had not been diagnosed when I was in both cases, the outcome might have been very, very different. So I wanted people to know that. I wanted them to get screened. I wanted them to get checkups. And that was important to me. But then there was also the emotional side of it. And I'm in the business of helping people. I run a large not-for-profit organization on Long Island. We provide addiction, mental health services, and other programs to people who are generally impoverished, people who are homeless, people who are struggling in some way, shape, or form. And so I felt that, for all these years, people have shared their deepest, darkest secrets with me. I owe it to tell my story as well and to maybe help lift those people up a little bit with some inspiration. So, the thought behind the book was, I can tell my story, I can process some of what I'm experiencing, but I can also share some of those warnings, share some of those blessings, share some ideas and concepts with folks who may not have cancer at this point in time, but the likelihood that you're going to get cancer is pretty great in this lifetime. And so millions of people will deal with this diagnosis. And even if you don't deal with this diagnosis, you'll have some health challenge or some life challenge that comes out of nowhere that you never expected. And so I felt like in the book, I could offer some words of wisdom to say to folks, look, you don't have to get cancer in order to change your life. You don't have to get cancer in order to better appreciate your friendships and the people around you and draw those connections a little bit closer. And I actually finished the book while on safari in South Africa. It's one of those things that I always wanted to do. And one of the things about cancer is that it reminds you that all those things in life you wanted to do, go do them, because you never know when you're going to be unable to do those things. And so, my hope is the book, and it's available on Amazon and all the major booksellers, is that it's not necessarily for triathletes. It's not necessarily for people who have cancer, although it would be beneficial for people with cancer. It's really designed to be a blueprint for how to live your life, how to have the awakening of a cancer diagnosis without having to get the disease and go through the treatments.
All right, fantastic. So for the person listening who just got that kind of life-altering news, be it cancer or something else, so what is one thing you would want them to take away from your story and your book?
For any life challenge that you're facing, figure out who your support team is. Ironman is not a team sport, it's an individual sport. But even in that case, it takes a lot of people to put on a race. There are lifeguards that keep you safe. There are police officers who guard the course to make sure you're safe. There's thousands of race volunteers. You don't do it by yourself. And there's your family that puts up with the sacrifices of all the training that you need to do 10 hours a day. In the case of any serious illness or any problem you're facing, think about who your support team will be. Is it your friends? Is it your family? Is it coworkers? But you should think about 5 people that you could go to in the event that you had a significant problem and needed their help. Who would you feel comfortable talking with? Who would be there for you? Who could help carry you through the tough times? And fortunately, I had that. But there's a lot of folks that aren't planning for this type of thing to happen. And they may have neglected their friendships. They may have neglected their families a little bit as they get busy with work or other things. Really reconnect with people, because in the end, it's those connections that carry you through the darkest hours.
All right. So, Jeff, after navigating everything, the marathons, the Ironman, the two cancer battles, so what does being successful truly mean to you now?
I think success is, for me, it's not defined in race times. It's not defined in work achievements necessarily. It's really defined in my overall quality of life. How healthy am I? And health is a gift that we're given. What do my friendships and relationships look like? What relationships have I been able to draw closer? Almost as important as the things you do, what have you been able to leave behind? Because, lots of us carry around the weight of guilt or shame or vulnerability or, some of the mistakes we've made in the past. And finding a way to let all that go is really important. You also begin to sort out and think more clearly about how you spend your time, right? Are you spending time with people who you really like? Are you spending time on things that will change yourself, your family, your community, or the world? Those are the things that matter at the end of the day. So I think those are some of the key changes. And that's what I would call success. A life well lived is one in which you have friends, family, you make the world a better place. And in all of that, you find just a little bit of joy.
All right. So finally, Jeffrey, for our listeners who want to read Every Mile Matters and connect with your work, so where is the best place for them to go?
Sure, it's available on Amazon. It's also available on my website for the book. It's everymilematters.com, everymilematters.com. You could find me on all the social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, TikTok, at Dr. Jeffrey Reynolds. Look me up. And look, if you're struggling in some way, shape, or form, maybe you just got a diagnosis yourself, or there's something else that I can help you with, feel free to shoot me a note. I'm always here to help, always here to talk, no strings attached. And I love helping other people who have found themselves in this situation. That's one of the reasons I wrote the book, is to be able to pass along some messages of hope and inspiration going forward.
All right, fantastic. So, this has been an incredibly inspiring and powerful conversation, Dr. Jeffrey, and I am indeed really excited and honored to have you on the show today.
Thank you. It's a great conversation. You did a wonderful job, and thanks so much for having me on.